Once again, that last episode, episode 3, was a heavy episode, but this episode 4 of Task 5 Reflections is one of the episodes I have looked forward to speaking with you all on. Speaking about just some of the reflections, what identities do you have that are connected to your research? This is one of the most important things that has aligned with my potential dissertation in the future. So, with the idea that I have with my dissertation, it is important to identify as a African American man here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Why is that important? Because my dissertation is going to involve the impacts of expanding an identity and just kind of thinking about how that affected me. Even if I'm able to include it, audio, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, audio ethnographic study, speaking about what was a process for me when I learned of my identities. This was something that came later in life. But then comes the question of what happens to provide that same process to individuals at an earlier age, i.e., the potential participants being high schoolers, juniors, seniors that have that maturity that are looking into what is next in their life and being able to add an aspect of their identification. I think that's a very important aspect. So from elementary, middle, high school, college, I had no idea of what um my ethnicities were outside of being a Black American. To this day, when I asked every single individual that was white, that was a loved one of mine or a peer of mine, professor of mine, what is your what's your ethnicities outside of America? Other countries were able to be almost immediately identified. Whether it was a heavy speculation or not, there was an immediate speculation that was able to be provided pertaining to the culture, pertaining to the ethnicity, the country. And this is where all the individuals that I questioned that were white, that were Hispanic, that were Asian. Um, and that is an amazing thing to be able to do. But for every African American that I asked, if I would have asked myself this question years ago, this was not an answer that was able to be provided outside of a state here in America. And that is a lot to do with the effects of imperialization, the effects of recovering from imperialization to where it was an intentional thing to break up the ethnicities of the diaspora, the African diaspora that was brought over to America to where we are still affected with that today. Did I know that my ancestors came from Africa? Absolutely. But did I know any country? Nope. Did I know of any ethnicity? Nope. And this is the vast majority of any of the participants that are going to be a part of my future dissertation. When I learned that I am Fulani Mende Crew from Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and from what was shared with me from standards in education and how that reevaluated my identity, giving me something that did not have anything to do with transatlantic slave trade, that comfort within my identity, that um that pride in my identity expanded so much because it did not begin in such a dark past in American history, as well as the history of my diaspora. So, um, thinking about what life experiences have you encountered to shape these thoughts, like I said, it was being able to have an idea of my identity prior to learning of my ethnicities, and then knowing, documenting how that shifted once I learned of my ethnicities, of the countries that my ethnicities came from. So as an adult, when I learned this, that was something to document. But then again, with the participants of my potential dissertation, how would that affect younger students, high school students that are soon to graduate, going into post-secondary life, knowing a little bit more about their identity that does not have such a negative, a dark beginning? That is my question. So just kind of thinking about all this is why this has been one of my favorite parts of this overall process. So again, that is the conclusion of episode 4, the reflections. I look forward to seeing you this next time in episode 5. You all have a great day. See you in another bow tie.